Hi, I'm Darryn Farrugia and welcome. So in this video I'm going to talk about one of those things that a lot of drum students ask me about, and that is the press roll. Now, the press roll is a sound that we can create on the drums, and I'm sure you would have heard the sound of the press roll in many recordings. It's very prevalent in styles like jazz and certainly New Orleans music. You will hear it in marching music, and it's also a great tool to use in drum solos. There are some classic Buddy Rich drum solos where he plays the most ridiculous sounding press rolls that just sound like, you know, piece of paper tearing. So it's definitely worth looking at, and I want to show my approach to teaching this, and I also want to kind of demystify it if I can. So let's get into it. So the sound of the press roll is produced by pressing the stick into the drum head. Sometimes we call this a buzz roll as well. It's kind of the same thing. But more importantly is the technique that we use. So I'm going to go into some detail as to how we get this sound. There are two elements to the sound, and I'm just going to work on one hand at a time. So at this point I'm just going to focus on my right hand. And the two elements to that sound are pressure and release. So pressure creates the initial buzz sound that we want, or that pressed sound that we want, and the release gives us the sustain. So it's pressure and release, buzz and sustain. So in order to get the pressure, we really use the pressure of one finger when we hold the stick. So I'm going to look at my right hand. Now remember, if you're a match grip drummer, you just apply the same rules to your left hand. So what you're going to do is hold your stick between your fulcrum, and you're going to apply pressure with this one finger here, which is your middle finger. It's the finger that's closest to the fulcrum. Those two fingers won't do anything. So that's the finger that we use to apply pressure. So what I'm going to do now is apply pressure to the stick and press into the drum head. That's the sound we want to get. Another tip is to make sure that you're not trying to play the press roll in the middle of the drum, because the middle of the drum is the deadest part of the drum, sonically as well as physically. So we want to get a bit of resistance by playing the buzz or the press towards the edge of the drum. So at this point, I'm kind of halfway between the middle and the rim. So that's kind of my point there. So for the moment, I'm just applying pressure. I'm not releasing that pressure. If I apply that pressure too lightly, I get this sound, which is not what I want. I want that sound to be a little shorter at this point without too many multiple bounces. So that's the sound I'm going for. I can move closer towards the edge. And like I said, at this stage, I'm just applying pressure with that finger there. If you play traditional grip, it's pretty much the same thing. Hold the stick in the fulcrum and apply the pressure of this finger here, the index finger. Remember, what we're trying to avoid is this sound. The next step is to learn to release that pressure so we can get some sustain. We want that buzz to just sustain a little while. So pressure and release. Now this is where it takes a little bit of practice to get the timing of that release right. So this is the sound we're going for. With each of those strokes, I'm actually trying to get the sustain longer each time. And that's really just by learning to release the pressure. It takes a little bit of practice. One thing you can try, if you think about timing these strokes, if you're thinking of 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, you can apply pressure on the 1 and then release the pressure on the 1 E, or the second 16th note. 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander. So if you have a look at my middle finger, you'll see that finger actually coming off the stick. 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander. So timing is everything. Again, it's a balance of pressure and release. So if I don't apply enough pressure initially, I get this sound, which is what I'm trying to avoid. Let's have a look at the left hand. So if you play traditional grip like I do, this is what you'll be doing. Again, you'll be applying pressure with the index finger and then releasing that index finger. So we'll use this counting method again. 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander. So I'm working on one hand at a time. The next step is to alternate right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Start slow and see how much sustain you can get from each stick. What you're aiming for is to get equal amounts of sustain from each hand. And then beyond that point, right, left, slowly increase the tempo until those sounds start to overlap. Other things you can do to create subtle differences in the sound is to apply more pressure when you're actually in the rolling mode. So have a listen to this. I'm going to play the roll with the pressure that I was using, and then I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure, and it actually tightens up the sound. So you can practice applying different levels of pressure. It really does have an interesting effect on the way it sounds. And that also may be tempo dependent too. So the faster you play, the easier it will be to play a smooth roll while applying a lot more pressure. Sometime in the 1990s, I had the pleasure of meeting the great Roy Burns. And he showed me a really great tip to help you get more volume from a press roll. And that's this. Rather than just playing in an up and down motion, in order to extract more volume from the press roll, you actually play across the snare drum. You play in this motion here. Let's see what happens. So I'll start with up and down, and then I'll increase the volume by moving the sticks towards the center of the drum. So an important thing to consider is actually subdividing so that you can feel that your press roll is actually in time. So I'm going to pick a tempo here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. At this tempo, I want to think of subdivisions of 16th notes. 1 eander, 2 eander, 3 eander, 4 eander. Each of those 16th notes will be a buzz. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see that my hands are actually moving in a 16th note motion. Now, if the tempo is slower, I may have to make the subdivisions faster. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I may need to think of 16th note triplets. Duckada, 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 duckada. So understanding those subdivisions means that you're going to play your roll in time, and if you need to hit an accent or come out of that roll at a particular part of the bar, you, at the very least, you know that you're going to actually play that accent accurately. Another thing worth practicing is applying different amounts of pressure to each hand while you're playing the roll, just to change the sound of it up a little bit. So let me give you an example of the sort of thing I'm talking about here. You'll hear a lot of that in New Orleans music, so I would say that you should actually check out some of that music, have a look at some Buddy Rich clips, him playing solos using the press roll, check out some of the great jazz drummers, Philly Joe Jones, Kenny Clark, any of those great legendary bebop drummers who have an incredible mastery over this press roll, and also that way you get to hear it in a musical context. I would also suggest that you actually check out some classical music too. Classical music, classical snare drumming really places a lot of demand on being able to play a very good and beautifully executed press roll. So it's a very versatile technique to add to your own vocabulary. Anyway, I hope that helps. I hope that's demystified this roll a little bit. Remember, pressure, release, buzz, and sustain. Take your time with it, work on one hand at a time, and bring those hands together into a beautiful roll. You won't regret spending the time working on this. So if you like this, hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And remember to hit the notification button so that you know when I've uploaded a video, which is every week. Until next time, have a great week. Bye. Let me do all of that again. That was terrible. What's the time? Oh yeah, I have to leave soon. I have to leave soon.